with vapes.
Well, in your opening statement, you said this historic success in protecting the lives and property of Americans has occurred when local governments have cooperated with you.
Yes.
Let me ask you, what are the greatest impediments you're facing in bringing down crime across the country?
Well, when local governments, of course, do not cooperate with us, and that's where criminals flee, in jurisdictions where they know they will be protected by local governments. And this is all about working together, and we have shown that in what we did in DC, what we're doing in Memphis, working together with Democrat mayors in these cities, right here in DC.
And very quickly, if you could tell us about the Safe Cities program and give us your read on what cities that avail themselves of this program can expect.
Yes, so far, of course, we've been working in Washington, D.C., right here to do everything we can, working hand in hand with the mayor, with the Metro PD, to keep everyone safe in D.C., and it's been a tremendous effort. And now we're in Memphis, working with the mayor in Memphis, as we talked about earlier, doing everything we can. These are iconic cities in our country, and we want to help every city in this country who wants and asks for President Trump's help to make America safe again.
Gentlemen,
Mr. Chair, I have receipts.
let the record show that Democrat was applauding the Attorney General's answer there. A unanimous consent?
Yes, please.
All right, the gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Chair, I have a few unanimous consent requests. I would like to submit into the record this New York Times article titled "Alex Brady's Friends and Family Denounce Sickening Lies About His Life." I also would like to submit this Daily Mail exclusive interview with Vice President J.D. Vance titled "J.D. Vance Refuses to Apologize to Alex Brady's Family After Spreading ICE Assassin Claim." One more. My last submission request is a New York Times article titled "FBI Agent Who Tried to Investigate ICE Officer in Shooting Resigns."
Without objection. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Bondi, I think you and pretty much everybody else here and throughout the country believes that convicted sex offenders don't deserve special treatment or privileges in prison. And yet, Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator, received perk after perk in prison. In July, she had a 2-day interview with your deputy and President Trump's former defense attorney, Todd Blanche. Just days after that, Maxwell was transferred from a federal correctional institution in Florida to a minimum security camp in Texas, which she, as a sex offender, would normally be ineligible for. At this new facility, as the ranking member talked about, and by the way, it's nicknamed Club Fed, we've heard reports that she's been afforded special privileges: puppy time, private workouts, personal mail, secretarial services. Attorney General Bondi, does a convicted sex offender like Ghislaine Maxwell deserve special treatment and privileges in prison? Yes or no?
Let me be crystal clear on this. No. And
Thank you.
let me keep going. No, let me keep going.
Perfect. Well, I
did not know she was being transferred.
I asked you yes or no.
She was not transferred to a lower
Mr. Chairman,
level.
please stop the clock and remind the witness of the rules. One rule she needs to understand
and I'm glad
here.
that we're agreeing. So when we're agreeing, we can move on to some other things.
When
but
we're
I
not
want you
agreeing,
to know that every time she does get these perks, and it's been publicly reported, that the folks she's abused, the survivors who are sitting here, they see themselves as being denied justice. They feel re-traumatized. And I'm glad that we agree on that. But she should not be in that prison. And she needs to be moved back to a maximum security prison as soon as possible. But what she has told another committee here is that she won't cooperate with them unless she gets clemency from Donald Trump. It's just crazy to consider that she can be wielding this kind of influence within the administration. But that begs the question, who ordered her to be transferred to the minimum security prison that she was ineligible for? Who signed off on the special privileges? Was it Mr. Blanche? Was it one of your other subordinates? So please, can you tell us who sent her there, since you don't agree she should be there?
I said I do not agree she should receive special treatment. She was transferred, I learned after the fact, to the same level facility, and that is a question for the Bureau of Prisons. I was not involved in that at all. The same level facility, I don't know why, but you know, instead of talking about Ghislaine Maxwell, who hopefully will die in prison, you should be talking about Irina Zarutska.
I have a couple
who
of
died
other
on a
questions.
subway.
Right, and I absolutely...
You don't talk about that.
I have been talking about it and actually helping with these issues. But we're going to move back to you.
I bet we are.
Yes, of course, because you're here to testify. That's what the whole point of this endeavor is. So of course we're moving back to you. It is all about you. So as we've heard, she took the fifth in response to every single question in that committee hearing. And her lawyer dangled the offer of clemency. Should Donald Trump pardon or commute her sentence? Should she be released from prison, yes or no? You said you hope she dies there, so I'm hoping the answer is no.
I already answered that question.
Good. I'm very glad. I really like this bipartisan agreement about
when
what
it
should
agrees
happen
with you, but you don't want to talk about Irina Zarutska. You don't want to talk about
I talk about her
murdered
all
by
the
a
time,
violent crime
but I
offender
am not
in
here
your
to testify
jurisdiction.
before Congress. You are. That is your job today.
You're
That's what you're getting paid
obsessed
for.
with attack.
Time belongs to the
I
young lady.
want you to know that your own DOJ employee, he's recently been demoted and had some other problems, advises on pardons. Do you think he will be advising Mr. Trump on any kind of clemency or pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell?
I'm not going to speculate, and you couldn't even identify properly. That's why you don't want to talk about Irina Zarutska. You couldn't properly identify her relative.
I absolutely
It's embarrassing.
have been, and her family, by the way, appreciates all of the condolences, all of the help, everything that our law enforcement in North Carolina has been doing to help her family. Her family feels well treated. Thank you, and I yield back.
Young lady yields back. Gentleman from California is recognized.
I'd ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an article by former Attorney General William P. Barr entitled, "Why Pam Bondi Didn't Publish All the Epstein Files in 30 Days." The answer is simple. It was not possible, from the Wall Street Journal.
Well said. Without objection, the gentlelady from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam,
I'm sorry.
yes.
May I respond 20 seconds to something that Congresswoman Ross said?
Go right ahead.
Thank you. She also opposed a sex offender registry as head of North Carolina ACLU. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Attorney General. And I'd like to pick up where you left off a moment ago, because we convene here today as a committee for the stated purpose of conducting oversight of the Department of Justice. And so it's critical for us to focus first on the mission of the department and assess your success in discharging it. So the mission of the department is to enforce federal law, defend the rule of law, and protect the American people from violent crime, terrorism, drug trafficking, fraud, and exploitation. To promote ago, you shared with us some incredible statistics that the United States under your leadership has achieved the lowest murder rate in 125 years. That in the first year of this administration, murder is down 21%, robbery is down 23%, carjacking down 43%, and gun assault down 22%. That is what public safety looks like. Under your leadership and that of President Trump, you've located more than 6,000 child victims of trafficking and exploitation, arrested 1,700 child predators, and apprehended more than 300 human traffickers. Significant increases, and those aren't just statistics, those are precious lives that your department and the men and women of federal law enforcement have saved. Madam Attorney General, you've mentioned a couple of specific criminal trends during this hearing that I'd like to discuss with you further, because one of our important roles in Congress is making sure that our laws and our law enforcement stay ahead of predators as technology evolves. I lead legislation in the House along with bipartisan co-sponsors on this committee to make sextortion a clearly defined criminal offense. We actually passed that out of the House of Representatives. We have a bill to promote Operation Renewed Hope to help rescue more child victims, and the Defiance Act to provide legal recourse to victims of deepfake AI intimate images. I would love to hear your perspective and what you are seeing related to these technology-based criminal trends, sextortion and AI deepfakes. What are you seeing at the Department of Justice, and why do you believe that efforts to combat these types of crimes are important?
Sextortion, and thank you for supporting that, Congresswoman. I think that was a bipartisan effort, actually. I think many of you on both sides of the aisle supported that. Thank you for that. You know, as a career prosecutor, it's horrible seeing that, and seeing that young women and often young boys have been exploited with sextortion. And I see, thank you, both sides of the aisle nodding on that. It's horrific. The suicide rates go up. And that's why we have to do everything in our power to protect not only young girls, adult women, boys and men from sextortion, because it is happening and we're doing everything in our power, thanks to your legislation, all of you, to stop that.
I'd like to hear a little bit more about some of the Department of Justice programs like Project Safe Childhood and the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Forces, partnerships that bring together federal, state, and local law enforcement. Sometimes the work between those law enforcement groups together really creates some incredibly powerful outcomes and some great success stories. I know you, as Florida's Attorney General, had a tremendous amount of leadership in our state, trying to make sure we were taking care of children, also the elderly, protecting them from fraud, ending drug trafficking. Tell us a little bit about some of those departments within DOJ.
Yeah, when you talked about Project Safe Neighborhoods, we've done a lot of that in Florida when I was state AG, and actually back when I was a state prosecutor prior to being Attorney General. That is so important. I feel like what we've been doing in DC too, with the Take Back DC and Make DC Safe Again, is similar to that. Going into the neighborhoods, working with the community, seeing law enforcement officers out there playing basketball with kids who live in the neighborhood. It's pretty remarkable what we've seen firsthand. Citizens in Memphis saying that they appreciate, they can walk outdoors now and they feel safe. People coming up thanking law enforcement and working hand in hand with them. We will continue all of these programs and working jointly with both sides of the aisle to keep our families safe.
Thank you for that, Madam Attorney General. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce for the record a letter to Director Gabbard from Mr. Warner and Mr. Himes, and a letter of response from her to them about who invited her to Atlanta, and a copy of the search warrant. And I'd also like to just make clear for the record, the reason people in Memphis weren't going out was because the ice was on the ground and we were afraid we'd fall. But other than that, we go out all the time.
Gentlemen, without objection, there's unanimous consent. The gentlelady from Vermont is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Attorney General Bondi, according to your department, a child is sexually abused in the United States every 9 minutes, and the vast majority of survivors never get justice. And that's one of the reasons why I think the Epstein case has resonated so deeply with so many Americans. And the other reason, I think, is because it has revealed a two-tiered system of justice. And the powerful are protected, and the survivors rarely get any accountability. And the Epstein files contain evidence of a multi-decade international criminal conspiracy involving some of the wealthiest and the most powerful people in the world. There's evidence of financial crimes, political corruption, sex trafficking, and of course, horrible sexual abuse. And I want to remind everybody, this isn't a game. These are real people, people who have suffered, who are sitting here with us today, and they deserve answers, and they deserve accountability. And I'm here to try to get some for them. Now, I've seen some of the unredacted Epstein files, And obviously, as you know, President Trump's name is all over them, but so are the names of other senior Trump officials: Howard Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce; John Phelan, the Secretary of the Navy; and Stephen Feinberg, the Deputy Secretary of Defense. These men were appointed by President Trump to senior positions in his administration. All of them have clear and confirmed ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Attorney General Bondi, yes or no, has the Justice Department asked Secretary Lutnick about his ties to Epstein?
Excuse me. Secretary Lutnick has addressed those ties himself.
I'm asking you, has the Justice Department specifically asked Secretary Lutnick about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein?
He has addressed those ties himself.
Has the DOJ asked Secretary Phelan about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein?
I don't know whether he has addressed those or not.
Has the Deputy Secretary Feinberg talked to the Department of Justice about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein? Yes or no? Has the Department of Justice talked to Deputy Secretary Feinberg about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein, which are clearly spelled out in the files? It's a very simple question. It's not a trick question. I'm just asking you.
Yeah, I'm stunned that you want to continue talking about.
Oh my gosh.
Epstein
Okay,
instead
I'm
of a Border
reclaiming my
Patrol
time. I'm
agent
asking
murder.
you not a trick question, a simple
Stunned.
question. Okay, so what is clear is we have evidence.
Do you know who Chris Malin is?
We have evidence that 3 senior officials within the Trump administration have ties to Jeffrey Epstein. And what I can
ties
conclude,
mean?
I can conclude
What does
from what
ties
you are
mean?
saying that you have not talked to them.
What does ties
So,
mean? Can
I
you
think
define
Americans would be shocked to learn that you are not interested in talking with these officials who have ties to Jeffrey Epstein.
What does
across
ties
the
mean?
world,
Can you define that?
across the world,
Can you
prominent
define
men
ties?
who've been
Time
exposed
belongs to the
in the files have resigned their jobs in disgrace, and that's a good first start. And that same
Disgrace is
standard,
not saying the word
this
Chris
same
Malin.
standard should apply here. And Americans want accountability.
Who is Chris Malin?
Was the president
he?
aware? Please stop talking. It is not your time to ask
was
questions. It is not your time. I'm reclaiming my time, Mr. Chair.
One second.
Time belongs to the gentlelady from Vermont.
Was the president aware of Secretary Lutnick's ties to Epstein when he chose him to lead the Department of Commerce? Was he aware?
Chris Malin was a Border Patrol agent.
Okay, so
He
I'm
was
going to
shocked,
conclude
and
that
she
the president, in
never
fact,
mentioned
did
him
know about his
in
ties
her
because he
district.
was the next door neighbor.
Shame on you.
Oh, for goodness sakes,
You're
this
from
is
a tiny,
pathetic.
beautiful
This is
state.
pathetic, Mr.
Committee will
Chair.
be in order.
I am not asking trick questions here.
You
The
got your
American
5
people
minutes.
have a right to know the answers to this. These are senior officials in the Trump administration. This is not a game, Secretary.
I'm Attorney General.
My apologies, I couldn't tell. By 2008, we knew that Epstein was a convicted sexual abuser. And we now know that Lutnick went to Epstein's Island in 2012. How was that not a deal breaker for the president? And why aren't you asking questions of the Commerce Secretary about what he saw when he was at the island, which he lied about not ever going to? Why are you not asking these questions? And I see that my time is almost expired, so I will say this. Do the right thing, Attorney General. Meet with the survivors. They have been asking for a year. Meet with the survivors. Do the right thing. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
May I have 20 seconds of his time?
So that'll be up to the gentleman, but.
Absolutely, Madam
Thank you. Thank you. I was curious if you, Congresswoman, asked Bill Clinton that. Didn't see one tweet, not one. I didn't see one tweet when Joe Biden was in office about Bill Clinton. Didn't ask Merrick Garland anything about Epstein, not once. When he was
weak sauce.
And
weak sauce.
also, I want the record to reflect that, you know, with this anti-Semitic culture right now, she voted against a resolution condemning.
Oh,
is
Jewish. I just want to be clear.
Are
you
do you want
kidding
to
me?
go there, Attorney
Time
General?
belongs
Or
to
do
the
you want to go there? Are
Time
you
belongs to the
serious?
gentleman
talking
from
about
South
anti-Semitism
Carolina.
to a woman who
Lady
lost
will-
her grandfather in the
I reclaim
Holocaust?
my time. I
Really?
reclaim my time.
Really?
The committee will be in order.
Talk to Jared Wise
You
about
just brought up
anti-Semitism.
anti-Semitism
Ranking
in
member
response to questions about Epstein.
What is going
This is
on here with
ridiculous.
OJ? You know,
Yeah,
Whoa.
I've been,
Ballant took
I think
30
the
of
whole
mine.
committee knows I've been very generous in
thank you.
making sure everyone gets their 5 minutes in the same
Attorney General,
reply
I'm
to
going
the
to talk about
gentleman from South
sanctuary cities
Carolina.
for a second, which limit
That's
the
crazy.
federal government's ability to enforce immigration law. They're kind of a new thing that Democrat jurisdictions
This whole
are
thing
doing.
has been a shit show.
They're in violation of federal law. During President Trump's first term, he rightly targeted sanctuary jurisdictions to try to force them to cooperate with federal immigration law. Federal immigration law, mind you, that was voted on in 1996, most recently, in a bipartisan Congress, signed by a Democrat president. But they are in violation of that law. These states and jurisdictions feel entitled to certain grants, of course. Y'all are combating that. Do sanctuary policies limit the federal government's ability to accurately estimate how many criminal illegals are in the country?
Yes.
Thank you. This means that the number of illegals could be higher, probably higher. Does this hurt the federal government's ability to carry out immigration laws designed by Congress?
Yes, Congressman.
In your opinion, do you believe that the Biden-Harris administration and Democrat pro-sanctuary policies make our communities safer and for the American taxpayer? Do sanctuary policies make our communities safer?
No, Congressman.
I want to do a brief video to highlight sanctuary cities. So what's strange to me, if you look at this board behind me, in New York, there are 7,000 criminal illegal aliens since January 20th of last year that have been released into the public because New York is not honoring detainers requested by ICE. California, similarly, has released 4,500 criminal illegal aliens. There are 33,000 under detainer in California alone. And of the people released, I think it's remarkable that those released in New York, 29 homicides, 2,500 assaults, almost 200 burglaries. These are people that are released into our community by these states that refuse to cooperate. Last August, Michael Jordan Castellano Fonseca, a criminal illegal alien with ties to Tren de Agua, shot 2 people in front of 5 children in the sanctuary state of Colorado. DHS lodged a detainer on him. He's awaiting trial, but the question is whether Colorado's sanctuary policies will prevent him from being removed from the country. Yes or no? Do you think that sanctuary jurisdictions, if they cooperated with ICE, those illegals in custody could be transferred to ICE properly instead of being held in taxpayer-funded jails and then released into our community?
Yes, Congressman.
Wouldn't it be more efficient and safer then if Democrats simply cooperated with the federal government, these sanctuary jurisdictions cooperated with the federal government and honored ICE detainers? And why? Why do you think?
Of course, because so many criminals are running to sanctuary jurisdictions. Many of your colleagues across the aisle who we've seen speaking today about Epstein don't want to talk about the illegal criminals in their own jurisdiction for that reason. And yes, we need to do everything we can to work together to make America safer, and they're not doing that.
This is not a partisan issue. People want to feel safe in their communities. Nobody wants a criminal illegal alien released into the street. I think that the thing that maybe the American people don't quite understand is that when you do not honor a detainer, as we've seen, an illegal is released into the public, and now it's up to ICE to maybe apprehend them, rather than behind the courtroom passing them off from one law enforcement to the next. Is that true?
Absolutely.
What do you think what is the Department of Justice doing right now to combat sanctuary policies in our country?
We're doing everything in our power, obviously, to combat that. Donald Trump is doing everything he can because we are going to make America safe. We are going to get illegal criminal aliens out of this country. We're going to get the gangs out, TDA, MS-13, all of the gangs in this country. We're going to get the drug dealers out and the drugs, and that's what we've been fighting to do. And I wish we could do it on a bipartisan basis, but they just can't do it.
And the decrease in numbers.
You'll notice she didn't say illegal aliens. She said illegal criminal aliens.
That is okay.
Mr. Cohen.
Thank
You're
you.
not going to get rid of all the illegals.
You see on
Only the criminals.
National Institute of Justice's study on undocumented immigrants having an offender rate lower than U.S.-born citizens. I'd like to enter this in the record from 2024.
Without objection.
And I have several myself, Mr. Chairman. The Guardian, January 26, 2026, why is Trump granting clemency to convicted fraudsters?
Objection.
January 20, 2026, NBC, Trump's pardons forgive financial crimes that came with hundreds of millions of dollars in punishment.
Objection.
Washington Post, December 19, 2025, Trump's pardons wipe out payments to defrauded victims.
Without objection.
And finally, May 30th, 2024, Trump found guilty by Manhattan jury on 34 felony counts of fraud.
Without objection. The gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Attorney General Bondi, glad you finally made it here after hiding for 4 months from this committee. I understand why you're hiding from us.
Chairman?
You're one of the worst attorney generals in our history and an instrument of Donald Trump's lawless authoritarian agenda, and I'm glad the American people are seeing who you are, how you act, and the lack of good values. You weaponize the Department of Justice to target immigrants, working families, and anyone that Trump deems an enemy of the state, all to protect real powerful criminals, including in your administration. My Democratic colleagues have focused on your cover-up of the Epstein files and your passion for protecting pedophiles and child traffickers. That alone is grounds for impeachment. But there's so much more to your corrupt tenure as Attorney General. You directed prosecutors to investigate elected officials in welcoming jurisdictions, and you got thrown out of court when you sued Chicago, Cook County, and Illinois. You directed prosecutors to prioritize low-level immigration cases while gutting enforcement against corporate criminals and public corruption. You revived draconian
You're
law
talking
of
about public corruption to
1798,
me? Whoa.
which should be repealed to illegally send people to a torture prison in El Salvador. You fired over 100 immigration judges, including the assistant chief immigration judge in Chicago, without cause, and installed unqualified military judges whom you instructed to deny asylum in violation of the law. You prosecute the president's enemies like Jim Comey and Tish James while giving impunity to federal agents who are murdering and brutalizing and terrorizing constituents, including in Chicagoland, in my neighborhood. I saw it last year firsthand. You and Kash Patel covered up the murder of Silverio Villegas Gonzalez in my district by ICE agents. You tried to investigate Renee Good instead of the ICE agent who murdered her, and you tried to cover up the murder of Alex Preddy by CBP agents. You bring fake charges against protesters like the Broadview Six and Marimar Martinez, whom your administration labeled a domestic terrorist. This is the Montessori teacher who lives in my district, while protecting thugs who terrorize us and DHS authority. That's what you do. Protect and enable the criminals who are plundering our society and destroying what's left of democracy and the rule of law. Epstein accomplices, mass DHS thugs, corporate criminals, Tom Homan, Eric Adams, insurrectionists, the list goes on. And you talk about fighting crime, but you protect any criminal who helps you and Trump turn our country into an authoritarian gangster state. And after all this, nobody supports you. I'm not talking about Democrats, I'm talking about conservative judges who are condemning the rampant lawlessness at DOJ under your leadership. Your prosecutors are quitting in droves over being forced to prosecute low-level immigration cases, including in Chicagoland. Your MAGA base despises you because you're covering up the Epstein file. How ironic. And even your own boss has repeatedly complained to your staff about you, calling you weak and ineffective. Weak and ineffective. That's what Donald Trump thinks of you already. You will not win, however. Chicagoland rejects you. The American people reject you. Our communities have demonstrated our strength and resilience in the face of cruelty and cowardice. Democrats must impeach and remove lawless officials like you and Kristi Noem and impose accountability for every criminal action. But you can spare yourself more humiliation. Resign now and submit yourself to accountability by the American people. Mr. Chairman, before I yield back, I ask unanimous consent to submit for the record this Wall Street Journal article dated January 12, 2026, entitled, "Trump has complained about Pam Bondi repeatedly to aides." Thank you, and I yield back.
Objection. Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I thank the chairman.
May I have 20 seconds, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Let's hear the opposition research.
Thank you. That's absolutely right, that they're not running for, he's not running for office again because, well, I don't know why you're not running for office again, but after the filing deadline, you publicly announced you would not run when your chief of staff, Patty Garcia, announced and took your seat.
That's a state matter. That isn't a federal matter. You should investigate crimes. You should investigate violations of the law.
The time belongs to the gentleman from Texas.
And a little flexibility on the time. I appreciate the chairman. Madam Attorney General, am I correct that under your leadership, the Department of Justice has prosecuted cases of non-citizen voting? So it's false, as some of my Democratic colleagues have claimed, that it doesn't happen.
Yes.
I ask that today because we're voting on the Save America Act today to enact common sense policies to ensure only American citizens vote in American elections and enact federal voter ID laws. But it's true, for example, that in just this month, a federal grand jury in Newark indicted 2 men with illegally voting in federal election and making false statements. Mohammed Mazammel and Mohammed Shakil were non-citizens at the time they registered to vote. This happens, it happens regularly, and you're prosecuting those crimes, correct?
Yes.
But does that prosecution of those criminals overturn their previously cast votes?
That's all pending.
But it does not overturn votes that they've cast, right? So passing the Save America Act would help deal with that problem.
Yes, Congressman.
Second question. As Attorney General, you're in charge of the Executive Office of Immigration Review, correct?
Yes, Congressman.
The Biden-Mayorkas regime caused the immigration court case backlog to explode, correct?
Explode.
Does that sound about right, that in September of 2020, 4 months before President Biden took office, there was a backlog of 1.5 million cases, but by the time President Biden left office, the backlog reached nearly 4.2 million cases?
It sounds about right, but I don't have the exact numbers.
It would be accurate to say that most individuals who file for asylum have a meritless or fraudulent claim?
Most. I don't have the numbers.
Oh, so does it sound correct that of the asylum cases adjudicated in FY 2023 under the Biden regime, that only 14% resulted in an asylum grant and only 12% in fiscal year 2024? Does that sound correct?
It sounds correct. I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers.
Could you get that information to us to verify that data?
I'll get all that information to you.
Under the Trump administration, immigration judges complete an average of 65,000 cases per month, the highest average completion rate in at least a decade. Does that sound correct?
That sounds correct.
Ms. Bondi, how many new cases under EOIR received in fiscal year 2025 have you all had? And of those, what percentage have been granted asylum? Do you know?
I can try to get you those numbers. I thought I had those.
That'd be great, because my question is whether President Trump's decision to pause asylum in the wake of the shooting of a National Guardsman by an Afghani here in Washington, D.C., in the nation's capital, helped to stop the backlog in your office. Does that sound correct?
Yes, Congressman.
My point being that the leadership of this administration is ending the backlog, and that Ghislaine Maxwell was charged in 2020, also under the Trump administration, correct?
Yes, Congressman.
So it is safe to say that the administration led on that issue and that there was silence in the previous administration. Is that correct?
Yes, Congressman. Almost complete silence from everyone who's been trying to still talk about Epstein. They didn't say a word.
The investigation began in 2015.
And I want to make one other point and then another question, though, that is important. I want to make one observation, that is that we've heard the information today, which is troubling, that Jane Doe's, that victims' information was made public and was unredacted in the files that were released on Friday. So my question is, some of us had argued when we were dealing with the discharge petition in Congress, that when Congress inserted itself into the process, that we needed to be very careful to ensure that we were protecting victims. So a question that is both, I just want to make that clear that some of us were fighting for that here, and we didn't get a chance to amend it or change it. So that was concerning. But a question a little more pointed, I have to say, is why, though, were the victims' names released that shouldn't have been? That there were names in the files, that these Jane Does, that their names shouldn't have been made public, when there were some accusers whose names were redacted? That's question one. And question two was that Ghislaine Maxwell was put in jail for trafficking minors. Rightly so, and you properly said here at this table, you hope she dies in jail. Well, I want to know, will anyone besides her or Epstein, which I congratulate President Trump's previous administration and this Department of Justice for continuing all of that, but that they were indicted, but will anyone else be indicted and prosecuted under this, given the information that's in front of us? So 2 questions.
Thank you for letting me answer that. They didn't want to hear my answer on the other side. Yes, given the tight time frame of 30 days, I believe we got everything released within a little over 60 days. I'm talking as fast as I can. My time is up. We did the best we could immediately. If everyone's been coming to view the documents, if someone's name should not have been redacted, we're releasing it. If someone's name was redacted, we said right away, was not redacted and should have been, meaning a victim, we went back and redacted it. We're doing everything we can based on the tight time frame and over 3 million pages that we released that Donald Trump signed for pure transparency. Second, what was your second question?
About whether another individual will be indicted.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for asking that. And they never wanted to hear the answer to that. We have pending investigations in our office.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Unanimous consent request from the gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Thank you. I have several UCs as receipts. I'd like to have unanimous consent to introduce the National Security Presidential Memorandum 7, dated September 25th, 25.
Repost the space, everybody, bottom right corner.
Bondi
Thank you.
Department of Justice memo dated December 4th, 2025.
Objection.
An article from Newsweek entitled DOJ Deletes Study Alleging Rise in Far-Right Terrorism, dated September 18th, 2025.
Without objection.
Notice article from October 3rd, 2025. Trump's directive on organized political violence could lead to increased surveillance of his critics.
Without objection.
Washington Post article, September 25th, 2025. Trump targets domestic terrorists, but only mentions the radical left.
Without objection.
Idaho Capital Sun, October 18th, 2025. Rest easy, Idahoans. The No King demonstrators are American patriots.
Without objection.
Attacks on freedom of speech, what nonprofits need to know, published by the National Council of Nonprofits, the largest network of nonprofits in America.
Without objection.
The Freedom from Religious Foundation warns that Bondi memo weaponizes federal law enforcement against non-Christians and dissenting viewpoints.
Without objection.
A Ken Klipperstein blog from January 28th, 26, ICE's secret watch lists of Americans.
Without objection.
And an Intercept article from February 2nd, 26, Trump calls his enemies terrorists. Does that mean he can kill them?
Without objection, the gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Attorney General Bondi.
Good afternoon.
Oh, you're right. Good afternoon. It's been a long day. I wrote this morning. We've known each other a long time, and I'll always be appreciative for your assistance when you were Attorney General in Florida after the shooting at my high school at Marjory Stoneman Douglas in my hometown of Parkland when we passed a bipartisan bill, the Marjory Stoneman Douglas School Safety Act, which was the largest policy response to a school shooting in American history. Your department also prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law a constituent of mine and former felon that had plans to kill me when he was picked up by law enforcement after he was target practicing in his backyard with 2 rifles, a scope, a silencer, 3,000 rounds of ammunition, an anti-Semitic manifesto. My name was the only name on their target list, and my kids found out about this from their friends at school. So thank you. However, the most transparent administration in American history. Before Trump, we didn't know the word transparency, apparently. It's been 12 months since you gave Republican influencers part 1 of the Epstein files. You said the list was on your desk. Then a memo came out and said that there was no list. Phase 2 of the binders never happened. The President of the United States says the Epstein thing is a hoax. He blasts his own base for wanting the release of the files. He blamed Barack Obama. Republicans voted against the release of the files in the Rules Committee. Then they refused to even return to the Rules Committee until they could be protected from future votes on the release. Speaker Johnson sends Congress home a day early before break. They sent the Deputy Attorney General to meet with Maxwell. She says something favorable about the president. Miraculously, she gets transferred to a minimum security facility. No one can explain why. Miraculously, the leaks to the Wall Street Journal stop. We come back from break. We have the Massey discharge petition. Republicans drop a rule, a non-binding resolution trying to kill the Massey discharge petition. The White House says passing the Massey discharge petition is a hostile act. Trying to stop the necessary 218 signatures, according to Republican members that signed it, the White House brought them into the Situation Room, you know, the place where the president goes for time of war, promising things like appropriations or maybe even to primary them. People in the room say you were there. It didn't work. We get the 218 signatures. We eventually passed the Massey petition. You guys didn't release the files. You were forced by Congress. Every member of the House except one and the entire Senate. The reason the president signed it is because it was a veto-proof majority. We can't agree on anything, and yet the entire House but one member and the whole Senate forced the administration to release the files. Kash Patel under oath said to Senator Kennedy, the FBI is not in possession of any credible evidence that Epstein trafficked girls to anyone but himself. We know now that's not true. According to documents, Epstein had a worldwide sex trafficking ring. Girls from Poland, Czechoslovakia, Russia, Paris, modeling agencies sending him girls. He even had a relationship with a summer camp where he groomed girls at a picnic table. Ghislaine Maxwell says 29 Epstein associates cut secret DOJ deals. Turns out there is a list. 6 names readily available if you unredact them. Co-conspirators named, but we got them when you unredact them. Maxwell recently tells a House Oversight Committee that she wants clemency to release more names. Kash Patel under oath said Trump's name appears less than 100 times in the files. We now know that's not true. Trump's name appears more times in the Epstein files than God's name appears in the book about God. Okay, by the way, this is the Trump Bible. Move over, King James. Trump's name also appears more times in the Epstein file than Harry Potter's name appears in the 7 books about Harry Potter. Lutnick says that in 2008, he went to Epstein's home, says he had a massage table in the living room, that Epstein said he got one every day, that it was the right type of massage. He and his wife decide to leave and say they'll never be in a room with him again. Howard then says, I'm sure the Epstein stuff is all on video. He was the greatest blackmailer of all time. Well, how would Howard know that? But now the files are public, and in 2012, we found out that he and his family are on Epstein Island after Epstein pled guilty to state charges. I'm from Florida. I take my family to Disney World, not to Epstein Island. There are documents in the files that dispute the president's claim that he kicked Epstein out of his club. Allegedly, the president said that he asked Epstein to leave. Supported now, that's disputed, though, statements from the manager of the club. Now, Madam Attorney General, I have like 25 seconds left. So because I'm curious, and I'd like to see you flip to the Jared Moskowitz section of the binder. I'm interested to see what staff provided on the oppo on me, and because we're in the Olympics, I'm going to give it a grade. I just want to see how good it is. So give me your best one.
So first of all, nothing is funny about mocking the Bible and holding up a Trump Bible. That's what you did. You made a joke, and I find offense to that. That's all I have to say.
I want it from the burn book.
Shame.
I want it from the burn book, which is the best one. What you got?
Has expired. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to clear something up that was said earlier and is frequently said and is manifestly not true. And that is the supposed small number of crimes committed by immigrants or illegal immigrants in the country. That has been based on a poorly done study by the Cato Institute, and I believe the Cato Institute itself has even updated that study. The reason that we know that study is not true is that those statistics are not out there. For whatever reason, when somebody is arrested, even for very serious crimes, we do not have on the paperwork whether that person is a legal or illegal immigrant, okay? If I go to one of my local sheriffs in Wisconsin and ask them how many illegal immigrants in your jail, they will say, I have no idea. We don't keep track of that. When I tour the federal prison right outside of my district, and I ask them, in this federal prison, how many of your inmates are illegal aliens? They will tell me, we have no idea. We don't keep track of that. So whenever you hear a Democrat or anybody, or a pundit, say that, oh, there's so few illegals committing crimes, it is based on nothing, because those statistics are not available anywhere. What I would offer in the next round of appropriation bills, if one of my Democrat colleagues wants to help me out, perhaps in appropriations we can get funds to add to all the paperwork whenever anybody is convicted of crime as to whether or not they are citizen or non-citizen. And then we will have the statistics. But otherwise, whenever you hear somebody say on MSNBC or wherever, oh, so few crimes are committed by illegal immigrants, they don't know what they're talking about because nobody has those numbers. Okay, there's the first thing. Now, the next thing I want to point out, we have had what I think is an unprecedented situation in Minnesota in which they are not assisting ICE in dealing with crimes that are going on up there. In other words, ICE is left to its own devices. When I talk to my local sheriffs, they tell me that whenever a federal agency is engaged in work in Wisconsin, they always make themselves available in case that federal agency needs assistance. This could be something like ICE under DI. It could be drug enforcement. It could be ATF. It could be FBI. It could be Secret Service. It could be the U.S. Marshal. Nobody that I have been able to find, any sheriff in the state of Wisconsin, is aware of any circumstances in which they did not make themselves available to federal law enforcement, either if they need somebody extra to do surveillance, to just park a marked car outside the area, to assist in apprehension of a criminal, if they need assistance with an additional SWAT team, if they need to transport somebody. Local law enforcement is always there. Now, you are not in charge of ICE, but you're in charge of several other agencies. Have you ever heard of anything like what's going on in Minnesota, where the governor or the local mayor refuses to give assistance to federal law enforcement?
I have in Portland and some other cities where they weren't cooperating. But as I said, I spent about 4 days. I did spend 4 days in Minnesota, and I believe many of the local law enforcement wish they could work with us to make their city safe.
Okay, now we'll switch to something else. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for doing this today. You're obviously very bright, obviously very confident, and something I love. You tolerate fools gladly, so I appreciate that trait. You suffer fools gladly. In hearings like this, we often focus on new initiatives undertaken by the department. Today, I'd like to give you an opportunity to discuss actions implemented under the Biden administration's Department of Justice, such as the Foreign Influence Task Force that you have since terminated. And you know, it's always rare to see anything in the government terminated. But could you elaborate on those decisions and highlight the accomplishments of your tenure at Justice?
Thank you for asking that. We are out of time, but may I answer, Chairman?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. The Biden administration weaponized the Foreign Corruption Practices Act. And on February 10th, President Trump issued an executive order pausing that for a DOJ review. Under Deputy Attorney General Blanche's supervision, a comprehensive review was led, and the department issued new guidelines protecting all Americans and protecting against the weaponization that happened under the Biden administration.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, I went over to the department yesterday for a couple of hours to review some of the unredacted materials. And I am looking forward to your detailed explanation for why you have withheld almost half of the documents, which is required by the bill. Now, obviously, there are 3 million documents, so I didn't get through much. But one thing I didn't see was the client list that you said you had on your desk a year ago. I did, however, find a couple of important documents. An 86-page prosecution memo from the Southern District of New York and a draft indictment from Florida against Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators. For reasons that I cannot understand nor are permitted by the bill, they were still redacted, even for members of Congress. So, Ms. Bondi, will you commit right here to immediately providing those 2 documents in unredacted form to members of Congress? Not a complicated question.
Well, I guess it is for you because you have a law degree and those are privileged.
Okay, they're not privileged, but we will discuss that later. I also found an email that I have right here from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell that was unredacted, and it included notes of statements that Donald Trump made about his prior relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, there is no reason for this to be hidden from the American people. There is no privilege, there is no attorney-client privilege, and I see you're checking with your staff, and I can assure you, staff, this is not under attorney-client privilege because it was sent from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. Will you commit to publicly providing the unredacted version of this so that the American people can understand the extent of Donald Trump's lies about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein?
You're about as good of a lawyer today as you were when you tried to impeach President Trump in 2016. Have you apologized for that in 2019?
So will you unredact this? Will you unredact this?
You were lead counsel on that. Privileged.
I'm asking you, will you unredact this?
Privileged.
Privileged, of course. I look forward to discussing this more. Now, these are obviously improper redactions.
And let me stop for a minute.
I'm talking.
If they're not privileged,
quiet.
Don't yell at me. If they're not
Mr. Chairman, would you stop the clock? This is on your time. It's not on Mr. Goldman.
They're not
Even though
privileged,
you used your improper redactions.
You'll like my answer.
To
if we
continue
review
to
them and they're not
protect
privileged,
Time belongs to the
we will
member.
be happy to release them.
We'll stop the
review.
clock. We'll stop the clock.
Can you allow
Time belongs to the
her
member. Go ahead.
to speak? Can you
Even though
allow
you
her
used
to
improper
speak?
redactions to protect
Can
Donald
you
Trump and
allow
other predators
her
associated
to
with Jeffrey
speak
Epstein,
for
you did
one
the
moment?
exact opposite thing with the survivors and victims of this scheme. So their identification information was really the only thing required to be redacted.
Repost the space, everybody, bottom
and it was
right
not.
corner.
And it's
Everyone
clear
go
this was
down on the
not
right.
a mistake. This was not by accident. This was not because you only had 30 days when you really used 75, and that doesn't even include all the hours last March that you were redacting it. But I'll tell you why it's clear it wasn't a mistake. There is an email entitled Epstein Victim List. There are 32 names. 1 is redacted, 31 are not. So someone looked at it and decided to redact something. And I will tell you that that is clearly intentional to intimidate these survivors and victims. Now, in an interview last week...
How will you tell me that's intentional?
In an interview last week, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche...
You can't go off script.
...said that any victim that wants to speak with the department has done so, hopefully. Well, thanks to the incredibly brave people sitting here behind you, we can actually ask them if that's true. Now, would the survivors and victims who are here please stand up one more time? Just by show of hands, how many of you or your loved ones actually have met with the Department of Justice and provided testimony and estimate and evidence? None. And of those of you who have not met, which is everyone, how many of you have reached out either individually or through a lawyer or representative to offer to provide testimony and evidence? All of them. And of those of you, all of you who have reached out, how many of you were denied or ignored by the Department of Justice? All of them. And despite the shameful and despicable efforts by Ms. Bondi and her department to intimidate you, how many of you are still willing to speak to the Department of Justice? All of them. Well, Ms. Bondi, it looks like you have some more witnesses to talk to.
Gentleman's time has expired.
And I yield back.
We will go to the good gentleman from North Carolina, Congressman Knott.
May I have a moment, Congressman?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Here we go. Here's the photograph. This is why he wanted to repeat everything that had been said previously on Epstein. This is his state, New York. You probably don't even know who this is. Wahid Mohammed from Afghanistan.
Yes, because I'm no longer a prosecutor.
Convicted of assault. Wow, he represents New York. Wow, yet he doesn't care about the illegal aliens convicted of crimes. Assault and homicide. No longer a prosecutor, so he doesn't care about his constituents. Here we go. Arson, El Salvador, Miguel Palacios. Fermin Flores Ramales, Mexico, rape.
Let's talk about the 70% of immigrants who are detained without a criminal conviction or arrest.
Stop the clock. Stop the clock. Time belongs to Congressman Knott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Attorney General, I want to be sure that the American people understand exactly what we're referring to when we talk about sanctuary policies. They are often framed in sort of innocuous terms like, we refuse to take part in immigration law. And when you add up all of the population represented by these cowardly politicians in sanctuary jurisdictions, whether it's a county, city, or state, sanctuary jurisdictions account for roughly 40% of the United States. Now, in reality, it's much more than just a passive exercise. Is that not correct?
Yes.
It's unbelievably active. And in terms of breaking down these terms, I want to break it down as clearly a term as I can. What is a federal detainer for the American people? Please describe it.
A federal detainer is when someone is held in federal custody.
Yes. And when a federal detainer is issued to local law enforcement, they are obviously in local or state custody, correct?
Yes.
And federal officers take note of that apprehension and they say, we want to come and apprehend him or her to deport them. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And in these sanctuary jurisdictions, whether it's California, Illinois, New York, or other places, even in North Carolina, there are sanctuary jurisdictions. That federal detainer often prompts not any cooperation, not any assistance, but a release onto the streets. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, and Congressman, a federal detainer is federal law.
Yes.
That people must abide by, yet these jurisdictions, many of these jurisdictions are not abiding by that.
And we hear a lot of talk from the other side about victims of violent crimes, sex crimes, murders, whatever it may be. But I want to be very clear. Illegal aliens who have been arrested for committing some of the most heinous crimes, they have been released by sanctuary cities, by sanctuary states, rather than being turned over to the federal government for deportation. Isn't that correct?
It is, and it's sad for all Americans that any jurisdiction would do that. These are some of the most violent criminals I think we've all seen.